Welcome to Bizprac software. Today we're going to look at tips and tricks of the trade in using Bizprac. These may be questions that have come across commonly in our support department, and at times maybe just those little niggly things where you're not quite sure where to go to. So let's get started. Today we're going to look at the Setup tab, and we quite often get the common question, I've moved, I've changed address, where do I change my details? Well, under the book sets here, this will list your business book sets that you're working with. So you'll notice the top one is highlighted and we have a green tick next to the one we're working with. We simply go down to the modify button here and this will list the details that we currently have. Now if we have moved, the address obviously needs to change. We're going to just put it that we've moved just down the road. Our phone details have been able to stay the same, and you'll notice there is room for license and ACN details as well on this tab. Moving over to the postal address tab, we can simply just use our paste buttons to pull that information in there. The tax office details again will contain information pertinent to the business. It is important that our book set details have the registered address that the ATO has. So these will be the details that are registered with them, and they're the details that will show on our reporting information, whether just simply on our reports or with the electronic files. So once we've made our adjustments, we click save and we're done. But as you notice, I do have two other business books here. So these address details will also need to be changed. So once we've completed that, we'll click close and we'll move on to some things under our settings tab and to do with our tax settings. Now these deal with how our BAS is calculated. So we're either on a cash or an accrual basis, and this would have been set up when we first set our business books up. So being on a cash, our BAS is calculated on a cash basis with the default codes of GST. You'll notice we have some default options here too for debtor invoicing, creditor invoices and orders. So this means that when we click on either of those areas and click a new button, it will come up with our preferred method of input. In this case, I've got selected inclusive of GST because that is how I wish to work. So these ones of course can be changed in the individual areas if you need them to, but these are the default settings that we'll work through. So once you're happy with those, click save. One of the other common things that we do have is under that same heading of tax is that we may be asked to change from cash to accrual. So there is a couple of steps in this process and there is a detailed guide, but one of them will be to change this setting here and then go down to change tax settings on existing entries. So there is a detailed guide, as I mentioned, for the changes that are required for these existing entries. So I'd recommend if you do have this situation where you have been advised by the ATO to change from cash to accrual, make sure that you consult the guide, and please don't hesitate to ring us at any time on the support department for assistance if required. The last thing I'd like to look at today is the data entry period. This is the data entry period, and basically it dictates the financial years that Bizprac is actually looking at. You'll notice I clicked onto all months and all of these months became green. That means that through this period here that are highlighted in green, I can input any data for those months. Obviously, since we're already into October of the second financial year of Bizprac here, we don't want to be putting information back in July 2015. So the idea would be to, once we've completed maybe our BAS or any of our financials for the period, we can actually look at locking them off. And we do have a couple of options available. One is this selected month only. So you'll notice that October is in green, but all of the other options are in red. So that means that we cannot put any information into any of those months, only into October. Now that doesn't seem really practical from a business standpoint, since we may have a little bit of stuff lingering over from September and possibly some stuff starting to come in for November. So what would be the best bet would be to go forward from selected month, and if we have completed our BAS already, we can close that off for that period, or we might like to just have this open until we actually finalise and lodge that BAS. You'll notice we have two types of warning here. One is warn only, and this is purple, so it will give us a warning that we are going to enter information outside of the allowable range, but we can override that warning and continue if necessary. Obviously, if we have finalised our financials, the preferable would be disallow. The red meaning that we cannot override that and enter any information for the period that's closed off. So as you can see, it's of benefit in keeping your records nice and tidy. It also means that we ensure that all invoicing and anything that goes into the program is reported on in the correct BAS period. So once we're happy with our selections in, we simply click Save and we're done and dusted. So that's some of the features that are available under the Setup tab. Look out for the next tutorials, which are going to cover some of the other tabs, the tips and tricks, and thank you for joining us at Bizprac Software.